What is the role for of the prefrontal cortex for consciousness? So prefrontal cortex, in short, PFC, is actually important for various intelligent functions and behaviors. And bilateral PFC regions, however, do not abolish consciousness, in short. So to understand this, it's actually important to distinguish functions or behaviors from consciousness, okay? And this is already kind of, inferred from your, understanding of the minimally conscious patients, because there, patients from outside of the, clinician's, view, because he couldn't move, he couldn't respond, he couldn't, do anything in terms of intelligence or functions or behavior, there was nothing. However, when you ask people, the participants, to imagine, tennis walking around, he was able to do it. So he was trapped, but he was conscious. And so if you try to equate the functions, intelligence, and behaviors with consciousness, there's a lots of difficulty you will see. However, this is also particularly the case for the prefrontal cortex lesion patients. So this rather shocking picture is the one that is taken for the patient who was hospitalized in 1937. And this guy's case report is really amazing. And that was published in 2001. So I'm going to go into the detail of this one. But what do you think is this guy's brain, like this complete gigantic hole for the left to right, here, this iron pole is penetrating his frontal areas. So he basically lost bilaterally prefrontal cortex, but he survived. And can he actually behave like us, or can he become like locked-in syndrome patient or vegetative patient? That's a question. So to remind you, there are at least 4 lobes of the brain. That is a very gross anatomical distinction between frontal and parietal, occipital and temporal. And the frontal lobe is relatively big here, and the prefrontal area is even farther, closer to the eye region. And then the frontal lobe is important for decision making, impulse control, judgment, emotion control. And these are known from, for example, the study of the Phineas gauge, right? But the question is that are these functions really relevant and critical for sustaining consciousness? Or if we lose them, do we become like a vegetative patient or locked-in syndrome from the at least outside of view? And I also note that this is an issue that has been debated so far, but I'll take this view written by Bodhi. I was actually part of the author for there, just to clarify my viewpoint. So the Phineas gauge had this massive region on one side, but this particular subject reported by Mataro had massive region on both sides. So this paper was had an title of long-term effects of bilateral frontal brain lesion 60 years after injury with an iron bar. And here's an important passage. At the age of 21 years, in 1937, he was forced to escape through a window and slid down a pipe that gave away. He fell and he was impaled through the head and on the spike of an iron gate. He remained there until the bar was cut and he was conscious and even helped in the rescue. So it's quite surprising, but human can actually sustain behavior and also will even get penetrated by this kind of gigantic thing. As long as it doesn't damage the big blood vessel. Okay. So this is the MRI taken really long time after. So the spike penetrated the left frontal region, passed through the both frontal lobes, injuring the left eyeball and emerged from the right side. It's a bilateral lesion. His occupations consisted mainly after, by the way, this hospitalization, simple manual tasks that were always organized and checked by the others. He required supervision even in everyday activities. He was incapable of planning or remembering his agenda or fulfilling his responsibilities, and he had difficulties managing money. So this is all consistent with what has been reported for the Phineas gauge, right? After massive injury in the frontal cortex, people tend to have a lots of trouble in emotion, decision making, working memory, and responsibility, devastating kind of effects to render this kind of person into almost like a highly unreliable person. Okay. And also noteworthy were his apathy, lack of drive, and problems with initiating or continuing and finishing tasks. Restlessness and impatience were also occasionally reported. Another noticeable characteristic was his cheerfulness. He would spend a long time telling the same jokes. This is another instance of the emotional control issues and so on. And bilateral frontal lobe damage does not seem to cause lower level of consciousness, meaning that he was able to wake up and then go to sleep. Okay, and spares most sensory consciousness, such as which I rephrase as a contents of consciousness, corresponding like a vision and audition, tactile, emotion, and so on, but profoundly alter human nature and social interactions. So if that's the case, then most likely the conscious experience itself was not really vanishing in this patient. Then where does it come from? That's a question. But okay, so just to summarize here, prefrontal cortex, PFC, is important for various functions and behaviors. But without bilateral PFC, patients can live, survive, and enjoy normal life with our altered personality, social interactions, and so on. Why this is the case? That's a question. And can we distinguish functions and the behaviors from phenomenology? About why is this a case? Eventually we need to explain this from the theoretical kind of point of view, like we did for, like we try to have at least for the cerebellum. And one possibility is that the cerebellum, like cerebellum, prefrontal cortex has a highly modular and not interacting kind of, circuit. But unlike cerebellum, it's not that simple. So we need more intricate theory and also intricate data. Now, leaving aside, can we distinguish functions and behaviors from phenomenology? That's an important question. And this is something that we are going to delve into more detail for the rest of the lecture this week.